Hey everyone, welcome to Psyber-Conversations. Today we are going to be talking about Star Wars Episode VIII, the Last Jedi. And I wanted to give you a quick disclaimer. This movie is easily the most controversial and divisive movie in the Star Wars saga. And Vern and I are both very, very passionate about Star Wars. So he and I agreed we wanted to let everyone know that we did at times we got very heated. We never yelled at each other or anything, but our voices did raise. But I want to assure everyone, and I've said this ad nauseum at this point, the point of my show is that people can disagree, even vehemently, and we still argue with each other completely respectfully, and it doesn't change our opinions of one another. And at the end of the day, we still are friends. We never said that we weren't. Um, but because this episode or this movie is being split into a number of episodes, I wanted to assure everyone that that message that we are giving a positive, I believe it's a positive message that people can agree to disagree without it being a federal offense. That still holds true, and you may not hear it in this in the first episode, but you will hear it by the end of our discussion. We are still friends. We did not ever say anything disrespectful to one another, and we just wanted to make sure that you all knew that. So, with that said, if you haven't already done so, please hit like and subscribe and enjoy the show. This is a big one. Hey everyone, welcome to Psyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. Today we are talking about Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi. I've been looking forward to this because this is like a huge, very controversial movie as far as Star Wars fans are concerned. It did change a lot of preconceived notions about what was going to happen and where Star Wars was going. It turned some people completely against Star Wars to this day, as far as I know. But other people loved it, including me. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. I actually have a few problems with it. But the biggest ones, the ones that a lot of people love to talk about and say why they hate it, I have no problems with those. I got Vern here with me, and well, I guess we should start with the whole thumbnail approach of what did you think? Like just an overall, before we get into the events of the movie, are
Sure,
you
that's
someone who
fair.
are you someone who I thought of the just the sequels alone, episode 7, 8, and 9. 8 is my favorite one. Um, in some ways, I said this last time. In some ways, The Force Awakens is my favorite because I think it's the fastest paced and the most action, and it's kind of fun for fun's sake. But I really loved Episode 8 because of Rian Johnson's changing direction, and we've discussed this before. His big thing is taking tropes and upending them and changing people, surprising people and doing what they least expect. And I love that because when The Force Awakens came out, one of the biggest complaints about it was that it was too predictable. So they hired Rian Johnson. I don't know if that was always the plan or not, but for whatever reason, they brought in Rian Johnson and he surprised everyone by doing exactly what they didn't expect. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts as far as like
Okay.
overall?
Well, so overall, I personally believe that The Last Jedi is by far the worst of all the nine Star Wars movies. It's a shame that I have to say that because as a science fiction Star Wars at its worst is just as good, if not better, than most science fiction. So as a science fiction, it's visually spectacular. It has good pacing. It has a couple of really cool, I'll go ahead and admit, genuinely Star Warsy kind of moments. But for a manifold of reasons, for myriad reasons, I think that Last Jedi is pretty much what is the line in the sand before which Star Wars was a craze, after which Star Wars began to die. And I do actually specifically blame this movie, along with Rian Johnson, directly for the downward turn of Star Wars popularity and the cheapening of Star Wars lore. So emotional, yes. Extreme, yes. But you asked.
Right. No, no, that's fine. And that's part of what this show is for us to agree to disagree. I mean, this
So now
was
we
how
both
we
know
talked
our
about.
opening perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this when we spoke about the Phantom Menace, which is one of
Yep,
your favorites, and
yep,
it's my least favorite.
yep,
Now we're the shoes on the other foot for both of us.
yep.
Um, should we start with a play-by-play the way we usually do, or?
I think that's probably the best format. We just done everything else that way, and I think that all of our other commentary will sort of arise from a review of what actually took place in the movie. So let's kick it off with the opening scene.
Right, right. I do wonder though, just before we start that,
Uh-huh.
I do wonder if Disney always had planned to bring in Rian Johnson, or if they brought him in as a response to people's biggest complaint about The Force Awakens, which was that it was too predictable.
That is a very good question, and I wish I had the answer to that, honestly, because in my opinion, and I'm reaching here because The Last Jedi is an enigma to me. There's no other rational explanation that I can come up with for what occurs in the span of this movie other than Rian Johnson hates Star Wars fandom, and he wanted to take this multi-billion-dollar IP and use it to slap the entire body of fans and then piss on the very thing that they love. And
Wow.
so why in the world would you hire somebody like this to govern over a very, very profitable multi-generational IP? It is a mystery to me. And I think that maybe my perspective could be, considered extreme. I think there's some people out there that are already nodding their head because they're in agreement.
I'm
But
sure.
but the fact that he dismantled everything that J.J. Abrams set up in the first movie, and the fact that they hired J.J. to come back and repair what he dismantled is evidence of my claim.
Yeah, well,
That
I
is
mean,
that is very chaotic, unprofessional behavior on the part of a multi-billion-dollar movie studio with 100 years of experience making movies. There's something very weird there, and I have reached to try to find a rational explanation for what really happened there. And what I just said is the only thing rational that I can come up with.
well, I think that the part that I was confused about, and you might be right, but I took it a different way when with what Rian Johnson did. I didn't feel like he hated the fandom, as you said, and I didn't feel like he was trying to shit on it. I think that he just that we talked about this last time when we were talking about The Force Awakens. The one complaint everyone had was that it was too much like A New Hope. I barely saw that, but you pointed out in our last
I very
discussion,
much saw that. Yes.
and everyone basically said it's A New Hope, and everything is the same. And we also saw,
I would
um,
go so far as to say it was a New Hope on steroids. It was almost like, well, I'll just reproduce what George did, but I can do it 10 times better because it'll be 10 times bigger. But that's a
exactly.
different movie. We're not talking about that right now.
Right, right. But we did talk about that last week,
Yes, yes.
and the impression, but we also saw some tropes being set up that looked like they were going to be semi-predictable tropes for a trilogy. They set up Snoke as the supreme bad guy, and it seemed like he was going to be the main villain who would be defeated in the last movie. They set up Kylo Ren. Something that I actually thought they were going to do when he killed Han Solo was because he said, "I know what I need to do, but I don't know if I can do it. Will you help me?" And Han said yes, he would, and then he kills him. I thought what the direction was going to be was that he was a double agent. He was always against Snoke, but he had to prove himself loyal by killing his father. And he hated doing it because he loved his father, but he did it anyway to prove himself so that he would be close enough to Snoke to kill him. But of course, that's not what ended up happening. I have no idea if that's what was being set up by JJ, but
Well, that
whatever
is
it
the
was, Rian
center of
Johnson, yeah.
sorry, that
No,
that is the center of my counter argument to what you're saying. Like I'm saying Rian Johnson hated the fans. You're saying I don't think that's true. I'm saying why in the world would he hold up a famous sign saying your Snoke theory sucks? He's telling the whole fandom, which has been a pile of nerds for 40 years, surmising all kinds of crazy theories about Star Wars, which is part of the fun of Star Wars. Here's somebody who does not understand the fun, who does not understand the fans, telling you all of your nerdy surmising about this story. It all sucks. Because you know what? I'm going to take this thing that you guys are having all this fun with, and I'm just going to kill it. I'm
but
just going
that
to kill it
seems
for no reason at all.
But that seems like, I mean, that's definitely a possibility because, far be it for me to guess what was going through his mind at any given point. But the sense I got was that he was trying to surprise everyone. It wasn't that he wanted to piss everyone off or tell them that their idea sucks, but that he knew everyone was guessing things like I was, that people were thinking this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And he said, no, I am going to throw you all for a loop because I want you to be shocked. I want you to be surprised. And
Okay, fine.
the last thing I want is for everyone to feel like this trilogy is predictable. And the
That's
one thing,
fine.
and in
But
that way,
why
he
in the,
did succeed. He
but
did make
why
it completely.
but why would you reach out to the fans and tell them that their thoughts suck? I'm sorry. I
Well,
don't know how you are dismissing that. I don't know how you're excusing
I
that.
didn't
That
feel
is
like
unfriendly. That is judgmental. And that is absolutely short circuiting one of the biggest things that's fun about Star Wars, which is all these crazy backstories and how we can figure out how it's supposed to work. And like, you're supposed to let us be geeks and then tell the story. But to
but
come right out and say, you suck, and I'm just going to pull the plug on everything you think, that's venomous. That's
I
vicious.
I don't know. Because it doesn't seem like that. I mean, I'm not excusing him if that was his mindset, but it doesn't seem to me like he was trying to piss people off. I feel like he was trying to surprise them because he thought people didn't want predictable. And
Okay.
there's you see it as him saying your idea sucks. I see it as him saying this is what you thought, but surprise, it's not predictable. I'm
Okay.
giving you a
Well,
movie that completely upends what you were
but
expecting.
Josh, the
Well,
difference between our perspectives is that he held up a sign that says your idea sucks. I'm sorry, I'm not painting anything on that sign. I'm not responding to a meme that was generated by some hateful nerd. I'm telling you what he actually publicly wanted the world to think. And I'm
oh,
sorry, if you're right, then then he is a good storyteller. He's just socially inept,
wait,
and to put into the hands of a socially inept person a multi-billion-dollar multi-generational franchise is possibly unwise. I think that might be unwise.
yeah.
So again,
Although
we go back to that mystery. We go back to that enigma. Like, why in the world did this guy, of all people on Earth, why did this guy Disney think was the one capable of doing the Empire Strikes Back of the new trilogy?
I,
Strange.
I'm worried that now my ignorance of current events might be showing. Did he like? Are you talking about a physical sign he showed up? Because I never saw it. Yeah, I admit I don't read the news every day about Star Wars because I find the
Oh,
news
I
really
see.
depressing. So I thought you were talking about, I thought that you meant he held up a figurative sign to say
No, no,
he
it was a
actually,
very famous meme for a while that that accompanied his own Twitter posts. It was, I mean, everybody knew about it for a while. I'll send it to you.
okay. Well,
There you
so for
go.
those of you listening, I guess that's me showing how little I know. Like I'm so lost when it comes to current events. I don't follow them all because I find the news to be really depressing.
Oh,
So I
hey,
don't
man. To be honest, I kind of wish in this case, right now, in this moment in the conversation, I was like you, because that is an image that changed my whole perspective on who Ryan is. I just think it's rude. I think it's inconsiderate. I think that it's socially inept. I think it's irresponsible, and I think that and I think it is a painful indicator of someone who doesn't understand Star Wars or its fandom,
Well,
and that would be fine in the hands of any rando. But this is this is not a rando. This is the guy that Disney chose out of hundreds and hundreds of capable directors. This is the guy that Disney chose to do the Empire Strikes Back of the new series of the new trilogy.
yeah. Well,
Enigmatic.
again, I feel very embarrassed because I didn't know about that. And that probably does change my perspective a bit. But I'm going to have to go with what I studied at least because I can't like change everything about my opinion on a movie on the fly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate your honesty. That I think everybody does.
I hope so. I feel like I just made myself the butt of a whole bunch of jokes. Um,
Nah,
talking
let's get
about something
let's
I
get
don't.
past it. You're
Well,
you're you're trying to defend the content of the movie, and I think my opinion sort of spans the behind the scenes as much as the on the screen material. So
yeah, yeah, but I feel like everyone's going to say, how do I have a right to talk about how much I love this movie if I didn't even have the wherewithal to do all the background research on, the making of. I just
well, it was one of those. I don't know if it requires background research. If we were all part of the stream of ideas at the time, which anybody on the internet should have been, then it was just one of those inescapable images. Because that was back when everybody was really guessing who Snoke was, and of course, if in a parallel universe, Rian Johnson holds up a sign to the world saying your Snoke theory sucks, if the answer to why is because I have something way cooler planned, I have figured out something that you'll never guess and that you're going to love, that is totally different. But I'm going to suddenly kill him and not answer any of your questions. That's just a stab in the back. That there's nothing cooler about that than all of the theories that people were purporting about Snoke leading up to that. So
yeah,
to hold up that venomous sign and say you suck, and then to just be like jab stuck, you're dead, whatever, moving on, like that. There's something I think not so covertly insulting about that.
yeah,
Directly aimed at the fans.
possibly. In any case,
Poss-
I have to go
Possibly.
with what I do know. I will say though, I if this came out before the movie was even released, then part of the reason I didn't see it is because I did my best to avoid any spoilers. I didn't know anything about the movie going in other than what the trailers showed us.
There's some wisdom to that.
Yeah, I like to be surprised when I go to a movie,
Yeah.
at least as much as possible. I mean, The Force Awakens was at least as predictable. It was at least predictable enough that I was able to guess what was going to happen quite a few times with no knowledge beforehand, other than what was in the trailers.
So, moving into the meat of the
Yeah.
story, when I said that The Last Jedi had some very uniquely and distinctly Star Warsy moments in it, right off the bat, the opening battle at the beginning of the movie with the bombers
Yeah.
and the new souped up Star Destroyers. Don't get me started on why we're still fighting Star Destroyers and something that it is akin to the Empire. That we're just gonna we've packed that away. Let's leave that alone. We're fighting big bad guys. And we're fighting them with a small ragtag force. Okay, well, that's familiar Star Wars territory. But
Yeah.
the bombers and the corvettes, I'm sorry, the corvettes were in Rogue One. The hammerheads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole scene with the bombers and the and Poe being a hot shot, like all of that was super cool.
I liked most of it. I did love the stuff with Poe, including I know it was a little bit ridiculous, but his antagonizing of General Hux. I'm waiting for hugs. Like it's comedy, but Star Wars always had a little bit of humor in it. I like that he's a hotshot, kind of an amalgamation of the smugness of Han Solo with Luke Skywalker's piloting skills. But the bombers, that was one of the things that bothered me, just because you have a whole group of bombers and they all are right next to each other. So when one blows up, they all blow up because one piece hits another piece. That was something that annoyed me. Just
Well,
because.
those kind of moments I dismiss because of the Force. I just feel like there's a magic to Star Wars and it's called the Force. And it makes a lot of things it's like, well, that's coincidental or that would never happen. Like you got to remember there's an invisible force field connecting everything together that has a will. And so it may be cheap, it may be a little MacGuffin-y, but that's how I try to dismiss a lot of the cool things that happen in Star Wars that sort of defy coincidence.
Well, it makes me wonder, like, who designed this, who thought of this idea? I mean, they said it was Poe Dameron's idea, but he's supposed to be at least smart enough to not put bombers one right next to the other so that if one explodes, they all blow up. Like, I don't even have a military mind, and I know better than that. Don't put a live grenade next to a bunch of other grenades. If you're
Yeah.
gonna throw a live grenade, throw it away from the things that are gonna explode, unless you want them to explode on your enemy. Don't put
Yeah.
them, don't drop a grenade at your own base and
Yeah,
blow up your own people.
the inside of the bombers was very World War II. Like that's how we used to do it in World War II. We have a bomb bay that opens up and we have like
Oh,
racks and racks and racks of these
I'm not talking
bombs
about
that
the
are waiting.
interior though. I'm not talking about
Oh,
the interior. I actually like that. I mean, we got a TIE fighter that hit one of the bombers. That would be, because Poe had taken out all the cannons in the Star Destroyers. So they started fighting with TIE fighters, and one of the TIE fighters hit a bomber. The explosion from the bomber and the debris from that bomber and the TIE fighter hit the bomber next to it. That caused that bomber to explode. And then the debris from that second bomber hit another bomber, and that second and a third bomber exploded. It
yeah.
was a
Okay.
chain
Well,
reaction that it annoyed me because these are supposed to be military mines, and they basically dropped a grenade onto a box of grenades.
yeah, so we are talking about the same thing then. You're talking about the external ridiculousness of the chain reaction explosions. I'm talking about the internal cause, which is the fact that all these bombs are just sort of hanging on racks inside the ship and swinging around freely. And
Yeah,
I just feel like that's fine in World War II when we had to sort of progress technologically very, very quick in order to win a war. And it was mid 20th century tech. So they got low tech. We're doing the best we can. These are dirty bombs. They're all sort of hanging from hooks. We get over the
yeah.
target, we open the bomb bay doors. That fine, World War II. But
I
this
I
is
I did
10,000
like.
years in the future. Like I feel like there's probably a much more secure way to, store things that would be dropped out of a bomber. Plus,
Yeah, I
we're talking about a bomber designed to bomb things in zero G. So the
yeah.
bomb bay door underneath dropping things down as if we're like laying down bombs on London or something. I don't know. I don't want to tear into that too much, but if you wanted to, I could.
I don't really want to because I actually like the design on the interior. And again, yeah, it is very reminiscent of World War II, and that makes sense. It's just that even in World War II, you didn't send a B-1 bomber with a whole bunch of bombs on it like right next to another B-1 bomber.
Yeah,
You
20
put
feet
the
away.
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
put the second B-1 bomber in
Yeah.
as far a place as possible, even if they were going after the same target. You don't put them near each other. So if one blows up, it blows up. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you get a lucky shot and hit one of the bombs, they're all going to go off and that bomber is going down. But if
I'll
it's nowhere near another bomber, then the other bomber can still make a shot. But the rebels, put all of their bombers right next to each other. So when one blew up, they all blew up, except for one, which was
yeah,
vital.
far be it from me, but I'll go ahead and be Ryan's advocate right now and say the reason why they were so close together is obviously was tactically disadvantageous, but the reason is because they were all in the engagement of the enemy, which was a singular enemy, and they were clustered together in a desperate attempt to take out that enemy by dropping as many bombs as possible at once.
Yeah.
So I get how that's tactically dumb. On the other hand, I kind of get how we're trying to take risks here because we've got a war to win and we're fighting against an overwhelmingly better funded enemy. So there's a little bit of logic to that.
I guess. I think that at the end of the day, the problem was just that in this instance, I agreed with Leia. She slapped Poe when he did that because he was like happy because they destroyed a Star Destroyer, and she was like, "You destroyed every single one of our bombers and lost all of our fighters doing it, so that we could
Yeah,
destroy
very
one Star
costly.
Destroyer out
Yeah,
of
very
all of
costly.
them." So,
Yeah, I wish it hadn't led up to Leia slapping down one of her star pilots. I think that we're supposed to love Poe, and like he just had a heroic moment. So to take that, I mean, just from a storytelling point of view. I think it was stupid to take one of your stars and give him a star heroic moment, and then immediately take one of your legacy characters and slap him down and make him look foolish. I think that
I
was
think,
stupid. But I
well,
think the root cause is the fact that if these bombers had been better designed and not designed after World War II jalopies, I think that they could have all been spaced out and they could have launched their bombs in zero G like torpedoes at a distance, and then the whole thing would have been a different, tactical show to watch.
yeah, I agree. But yeah, I think that there was an importance to her slapping Poe because he does have character building throughout the movie because he finds out later on in the movie he keeps being impetuous and it costs them a bunch, and then he
Yeah,
finally finds out there was a plan.
one of the
Trust
few.
Leia. Yeah.
One of the few, I might add. Unfortunately, we love dynamic characters, but Poe Dameron is one of the few dynamic characters in the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
And I
But
will
anyway,
hand it to Rian that he understands the value of a dynamic character. And so even though we've established Poe in the first movie, he really does sort of strip him down and then build him up throughout the course of this movie. So like, I mean, it's further mind-boggling to me because obviously Ryan's made movies before. Obviously Ryan's been to college. Obviously Ryan studies mythology and understands the dynamics of storytelling. And obviously, Disney entrusted him with a multi-billion-dollar franchise and basically gave him free license without even like a blueprint of what to do. So there's all these reasons why he should have been able to tell a good story, but it just feels like why did he do what he did? And that's what leads me ultimately to logically conclude. It seemed like secretly he just wanted to bust the entire Star Wars fan base right in the mouth, leave a black and blue, mark, and then walk away counting his money, knowing that Disney's never going to hire him again.
yeah.
Anyway,
In any,
Poe Dameron is a dynamic character, and so
yeah.
I will hand that to Ryan. We love dynamic characters, and in this case, he did do that with Poe.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I did. I don't think I noticed it the first time I watched it because, I'm watching explosions and not paying attention to names or anything. I hadn't realized the very first time I saw it, but I picked it up the second time, was that the woman in the fight in the bomber, the last one who manages to blow up the bombs before she and the bomber is destroyed, that is
Mhm.
Paige Tico, Rose Tico's
Rose's
sister.
sister, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
We I think didn't we get that from the beginning? I mean, that was my
we
impression right off
did.
the bat.
We did. It's just the first time I saw the movie, I didn't pick up on it
Oh,
because I
okay.
was,
I did.
I was so enamored by the explosions, I didn't really catch her name. So, I
Okay.
mean, that's just something I was
Well,
much
as
more familiar with the movie the second time I watched it. I knew the name Rose Tico, so when they said it was Paige Tico, I was like, oh, it's Rose's sister.
come on,
And
there's
also
nothing that Star Wars fans like better than pew pew and explosions.
yeah, yeah,
We're very easily distracted.
but it also gives credence to later on when we first meet Rose, which we will get to. I'm not trying to rush there, but the first time we see her, she's crying because her sister has died. Um, but in any case, after we have that run, we go to well, they do give us a little tiny cursory, reassurance that Finn is still alive because they give us a look at him walking around. He's woken up in the Bacta tank or Bacta suit, whatever it was. Um, so he's alive, even though he was sliced in the back. He has recuperated. But then we switch to Ahch-To. Ahch-To. I don't know how to say the name of the planet.
Wait. Didn't we skip there's a significant moment there. Am I skipping ahead? Wasn't there a moment there where Kylo had his finger on the trigger, but he recognized that his mother was in the bridge and he pulled his finger off the trigger? I feel like that's a very significant moment.
Um,
Wasn't
no,
that
that's
in that
no,
beginning
that's
battle?
no, that's later on. That's the battle where she
Okay.
does get blown up. He's just not the one who does it.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
definitely want to touch on that though, because I
yeah.
feel like that was a cool moment, sort of illustrating that Kylo isn't fully overtaken by the dark side.
Right, right. But
Okay,
yeah, no, we're
okay,
not there yet.
okay.
So yeah, they do assure us that Finn is alive, and then we go to I think it's
Yeah.
pronounced Ahch-To.
And we also get our first glimpse of what is the I think largely almost universally considered the worst Star Wars character of all time.
The Porg.
There are many people that rail against Rose for reasons that boggle my mind. There are many people that hate on young Anakin for reasons that piss me off because they took it out on the actor instead of the character.
Hmm.
There are many people that still continue to hate Jar Jar. I get all that, but there's one character that's hated so much that nobody even bothers hating her. No, one character that people don't even bother talking about because they hate her so much, and that is, of course, Admiral Holdo.
Oh, well, we don't really meet her yet either. I don't think.
Nobody even talks about her.
I liked her. I thought that she was
Oh
a cool
my
character
God. Of course Josh does. Okay.
because, well, yeah, we'll get into it, but I don't think
All
she
right.
gets
All right.
introduced yet. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure she is not introduced yet. So going by the movie, the next thing that we do is we go to Ahch-To. I'm going to call it Ahch-To. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
Okay.
It sounds better than Ahch-To. Um, and that's where Rey is with Luke
Yep.
And Chewie is there and R2 is there as well, but we don't really see them. She's holding the lightsaber out. He tosses it behind him, and it's supposed to be a funny moment. And a lot of people blew up and hated it because of what he's doing. I think it makes sense, and this is something that we've talked about before, but to reiterate, I like the direction that they took Luke because I never saw him as this larger than life hero. He always was flawed. He always was rash and impetuous and quick to make a decision and then, go off in a huff. He's always been like that. And some people like to say Return of the Jedi showed that he was no longer impulsive. And I'm like, no, that his underlying traits don't change just because he learned to control himself in, one instance. I think it was always there. I think that what we find out later on in the movie makes perfect sense that he would give up, be disgusted with everyone, and just go be by himself and decide that the Jedi need to go away.
Yeah.
So
So I
he
strongly disagree.
right, and I figured you would, which is why I
I strongly
wanted to.
disagree because I mean, we could consider these characters to be real people, but
Mhm.
let's just for a moment consider that they're not real people. Let's just consider that they're characters in a story. In fact, they're characters in a spacey, unrealistic, ungrounded story that was originally made for children. That being said, Luke embodies the concept of hope, which is the very thing that drives the entire story from beginning to end. Luke embodies the very spirit of the rebellion, which is not violence, which is not collateral damage, which is not even revenge. It's hope. Hope that things can be better, hope that evil can be redeemed, hope that good can be reestablished. And so to take that character that embodies hope and then literally make him hopeless, to take him and to take somebody who had blue hair and make it green, to take somebody who was kind of angry and is now meditating and trying to get his anger under control, or somebody who was frustrated and at the end of his rope, and now you're painting him as an alcoholic. Those are progressions. I get progressions, but to take somebody who is literally the representative in the story of something and then pull that out of him and replace it with the exact opposite with no good explanation. I get it. Over the course of the story, we get a little bit of explanation, but it's totally insufficient to convince me that this character that represented hope now represents hopelessness.
I
It's mean. It's mean to the fans. It's mean to the franchise. It's cruel to the character. And it absolutely turns on its head the very thing that drives Star Wars as a story. Who is the hopeful character now that Luke has become the anti hopeful character? Who is it? Is it Yoda's ghost? Who is the hopeful character? Is it Rey? Who's the hopeful character now? Who's the incorruptible hopeful character that we had in Luke now that Luke has become the anti hopeful character?
I never thought that Luke was incorruptible, and that's the whole point. This
Well,
movie
maybe
brings
you
him
haven't
back.
seen Star Wars. Have you ever seen Star Wars? Because
No,
it's a great movie
he
with
was
Luke in
not
it. And
he was not incorruptible. He had bad qualities to him. He always did. And
well,
uh
incorruptible
and
doesn't mean you don't have bad qualities. It means you're incorruptible. Luke was
yeah, he was
incorruptible. He
I
could not
didn't
be
think he was.
corrupted.
He was corrupted. I think that he was always possible that he could
How
be
was he
corrupted.
corrupted per se?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about in this movie. He has been corrupted.
Oh
He
yeah,
has,
well, no, well,
but
okay, well, we
but
need to
but
get on the
the
same page, Josh. We're talking about this movie. You're saying it's wonderful. I'm saying it's a plague, and we're talking about why it's wonderful or a plague based on what happened before it. So, based on everything up to this movie, Luke was incorruptible, and if he was corrupted, I would like for you to tell me right now when and how
no,
he was
in
corrupted.
the original trilogy, he was not corrupted. I'm not
Okay, there you
saying that
go.
he
I
was. Yes,
That's my point.
but I'm saying that I never thought of him as incorruptible. I never thought of him as superhuman. And the part of why I didn't like the Legends books, which are no longer canon, were because they made him into some superhuman Jedi
Well,
master, the master of all masters. Like I never liked it because
Well, I have
Luke
a fair question for you. How, once Lucas presents an incorruptible character, do you fail to see him as incorruptible? How, when Lucas presents a superhuman character, do you fail to perceive him as superhuman? I mean, you can't,
Lucas
you don't get your way on this one. This is a
Lucas
character that
never
somebody else made.
but Lucas never made him incorrupt and Lucas never made him incorruptible other than not showing him corrupted. He never made him superhuman. Like he didn't
What?
do it. He never made him superhuman. The Legends books made him superhuman,
I
made
don't
him this
understand. I don't
well
understand. Luke did
Lucas
superhuman
had
things
nothing to do
right
with the
off the
Legends.
bat. The moment that he put a blinder helmet on and was able to block three bolts from a training droid, he became
Well,
superhuman. He was
yeah,
superhuman the entire time.
yeah, but that doesn't. Yeah, but there. So was Ben. So was Yoda. So was Darth Vader. And Darth Vader is a perfect example of someone who was
All true.
corrupted just
Yeah, all
because,
true.
yeah, he was superhuman in that he had these abilities because he's a Jedi. But that doesn't
Hmm.
mean he's incorruptible. I never saw him
Well,
as
those are two
a.
different things.
Well, I'm talking about the fact that the Legends books, which
Hmm.
George Lucas had nothing to do with,
Yeah.
made him this master of masters. He was the
Well,
ultimate Jedi. Nothing could touch him. He was the character that we were talking about when we were speaking about Attack of the Clones and how I would have liked to see Yoda not even fight Dooku, but just be like, bitch, please. And Dooku tries to hit him with a lightsaber, and Yoda's just like, holds up his hand, and Dooku's completely disarmed. I wanted him, that's what the books did to Luke, and I didn't like it because I don't see Luke that way. I think that Luke, seeing the way the Republic was going, which we hadn't seen yet, but we have seen now, the Republic is like a bunch of kids that don't know what they're doing. The new Republic, I mean, to see all of the work that he did in the original trilogy and it all gets destroyed by the First Order, to see what we find out about his attempt to build a Jedi temple and then his fear of getting another Darth Vader leading to another Darth Vader who destroys the Jedi temple. I could see him being broken enough for him to be like, I give up. Like I did my best. I tried to make this place a better, this galaxy a better galaxy than it was, and y'all fucked it up, and I'm done. I could see Luke doing that,
I don't. I don't
and
see that.
and
I don't see how Luke could look at the darkest, most evil, destructive, people-killing person in the whole galaxy and see, without any evidence, feel with his heart, just by pure hope, just by pure positivity, feel that there's a sliver of good in his father enough to be able to rescue him and never give up on that concept all the way to the very end. And then the same person senses a dream in his own nephew and then encounters the possibility that he may make a bad decision in the future and then take out his lightsaber to want to murder him, his own
well,
nephew.
he
I'm sorry,
wasn't
I
going,
don't make that connection.
but he wasn't going to murder him. We find out like there's two sides to that story which we see, and then we see the real thing the third time. The first one he tells Ray the story. Luke tells Ray the story, so he's like he just went in and Kylo Ren was murdering people. The second time we hear Kylo's version, where Luke came in and intended to kill him. The third version, he drew his lightsaber, he looked at it, and then he put it, he extinguished it. He wasn't going to kill Kylo Ren, or well, I should say Ben. But
For a
Ben was
moment
already
there, he
awake.
was. He took out the lightsaber and he ignited it. Why? With the intention of murdering his own nephew.
I don't know if he had the intention. He ignited it maybe
Why
because he
would
was
you take your
considering it.
lightsaber out and ignite it?
I don't know that he was going to use it. I mean, the whole point is he was, stuck. He didn't know what to do. He chose to extinguish the lightsaber.
Well, wait a minute, Josh. If you're a Jedi and you're stuck and you don't know what to do, is that a good moment for you to ignite your lethal weapon?
No, but
No, no, it isn't.
again, no, but people, cops are not supposed to draw their weapon unless they intend to use it, but they do it all the time. Or they're not supposed to fire unless they feel like they're in danger, but they do it all the time. People aren't supposed to do things. Luke wasn't supposed to do something, but he did it. And I could also see Luke, part of the problem is that Luke feels responsible because he is. He made a mistake and he can't forgive himself. Part of why, like you were saying, he's a hopeful character, but now he's not hopeful. That's an arc that they give us. This movie gives him a character arc. Now Luke is at his lowest point again, and now he, over the course of the movie, renews his hope through talking to Rey. He finds, well, between Rey and also Force Ghost of Yoda, he finds himself, hopeful again, and he goes and well, we get the end of the movie.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I also have to have some contention with the idea that the new republic has opened up and everybody's just an immature, naive child. Like, come on. The Empire was around for one generation. The people that fought so hard to restore the republic were the ones that got the reins of the republic when it came back. These are not naive children. These are people that understand the way things used to be, people that understand how to rebuild what was lost, probably people who understand what went wrong and how to rebuild the new republic to safeguard against those things. So I deny the idea that the republic is that everybody in the whole galaxy is finished and dead and all that's left is a bunch of punks that read a book once and decided to start a republic and call it the
No, I
republic
don't.
because they didn't know what else to call it.
I don't mean that they're a bunch of punks in that they didn't know what they were doing. It's that you can see, we find out later on through some of the shows, the New Republic wasn't handled well. It's a bunch of bureaucracy, and
Yeah,
they aren't handling it right.
but it
And
could have been.
not to
In a
not
parallel
to
universe, it was. In another
yeah.
dimension where we did it right, where we presented people the way they really are, the Republic was rebuilt, which is something far more satisfying to the fans because then all the struggles that we've seen everyone go through from the beginning are worthwhile.
Granted,
Because if if
but
if every single time we get all these Star Wars people together, they just build a mess, then who in the hell are we rooting for?
well, granted, but we've talked about that in the last movie. Like maybe they
Hmm.
should have done that, but they didn't.
Hmm.
And not to bring real world politics into this because I definitely don't feel qualified.
Yeah,
But
I
you
definitely don't
know,
want to do that.
but we do know, and I don't really want to read this again, but we had that great definition of science fiction has always addressed political things. Like people who like to say things like Star Wars or Star Trek aren't political, just they're fooling themselves because it's always been political.
Yeah,
And
everything's political.
not
But
for
as far as
nothing,
like, but the point of the of a hopeful story like this is that yes, politics has a tendency to repeat the same mistakes of the past, but in a galaxy far, far away, full of a bunch of people that look like humans but aren't humans, here's an example of how it can be done right.
I'm
These are
pretty
people that have
sure,
actually got it figured out.
yeah, but I'm pretty sure that the message was that this is the world we're living in right now. I think they're extending the concept that George Lucas made the empire in the shape of Nazi Germany. They're extending it and saying, here are the victors, and they screwed it up and made it into another empire. Cue Trump. All right. I'm not saying this is what he is. I'm not saying a political view of my own, but I heartily believe that either J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson or Disney, or maybe all of them, were trying to tell people this is what Trump is doing, and I'm going to show you a movie. I mean, it wasn't Trump at the time. When was the movie? The movie came out in 2018.
It sounds
Uh,
right.
So he was like talking about politics already, but he wasn't
2017.
2017. So he wasn't, wait, was he? Oh, yeah. So he was president.
Yes, as of 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the message that they were trying
Well,
to
I think
convey.
depending on your personal political perspective, you're going to see whatever you want to see. You're going to interpret, however, you're going to skew it to your own interpretation. However, I would just like to step back and say, in the most non-biased way possible, I think that's a mistake. I think this is spacey theater. This is a galaxy far, far away. This is not humans. This is not America. This is not Earth.
No,
And
no.
the one thing that sci-fi does extremely well is give you a worst case scenario so you know how to avoid it, and a best case scenario as a fantasy, so that if you want, you could actually pattern yourself in that direction.
Yeah,
So
but
if all you're doing is taking our misery and then projecting it into a galaxy far, far away, you're not really giving anybody an escapism. You're just giving everybody the same depression that they can't seem to escape from at home anyway, which
I
I
don't
think is
think
a mistake when it comes to Star Wars.
I don't think that they were saying that's where we are. I think they were saying that's where we could be. I think that was them saying this is where we are headed.
Well, but
I
that's
I,
but
I
that's
don't
that's
know because
highly
that's
predictive. There's a whole industry of political commentators whose job it is to be highly predictive. It's not
yeah,
the
but that
job
doesn't.
of fantasy storytellers to do that.
It has always been their job. That's what they've been doing for years. Star Trek, you love Star Trek more than I do, and I'm a
Hmm.
huge fan of Star Trek. The
Yeah,
original Trek
well, okay.
had a
That's
number of
extreme
episodes.
prediction though. That's hundreds of years in the future prediction. That's not
But
that's not this is going to happen on Earth here in America
no,
tomorrow
no,
kind of
but
prediction. That's
I'm
different.
talking about the fact that in the original series they had a number of episodes that talked anti-war statements because it was coming out during the Vietnam War. These were it was very clear the writers were speaking out against the war to anyone who was paying attention. That was their intention. That's what they
Okay.
were trying to say. It was a real world thing, and they were doing a non-real world in Star Trek, but they still said the Vietnam War, we're against it, and we're going to put it in our show, and we're going to, slap a couple of flowers on it so that it doesn't look recognizable, but it's still the same thing.
Okay. But to
Racism with
stay
the
on
guy
track.
who's like got a white side and a green side, and the other guy's got a green side on the other side, so he's like inferior. Like that's them making a statement about racism in 1960s America. It was, this was a slap at anyone who thinks they're different. This is Mr. Rogers getting into a wading pool with a black police officer to show everyone, oh, we're not allowed to do this. This is an awful thing. Guess what? F you. I'm getting in the pool with my friend who happens to be black. It was a slap in the face at all of those people. And I'm not putting words in the mouth of Rian Johnson or JJ or Disney, but I would not be surprised at all if that's exactly what they were saying.
Okay. But to stay on track, we
Yeah,
should probably stick to the galaxy far, far away and
I'm
not
sorry.
to Earth or the United States of America. And
Yeah, or
so
Star Trek.
if
I'm just
if if in relation to the topic of conversation, what you're trying to say is that the survivors of the rebellion were a bunch of klutzy fools who didn't know how to rebuild the republic, and that is actually what some movie maker was trying to say is us, then I don't see how that prediction is actually doing us any good or even warning us. It's only presenting what we all painfully and endlessly, exhaustively have to experience every single day. And the whole
but that
point of Star Wars, aside from being, if you will, predictive sci-fi, is to give us an escapism, to give us an escape from that. So
yeah,
I don't personally think that we're a bunch of endlessly bumbling fools that can't possibly get government right, and I don't personally think that it's logical to predict that Leia and Holdo and the Organas and Mon Mothma and all these other people that were part of the original Republic that survived the rebellion, that even guided the rebellion. Um, Admiral Akbar, the rest of them, all those guys that had been there all along, they survived and then they came together to rebuild the Republic. And I believe that the only way to honor the dead, the only way to settle the dust, the only way to do this right is to remember what we lost and try to restore it, but also create safeguards against the very things that collapsed. And so if you get all these yahoos together and they put up their Confederate flag and start making all the same mistakes, then logically you have to shrug your shoulders and go, what the fuck was the whole conflict for in the first place? Why did all those trillions of people have to die so that we could end up right back where we started? So I'm sorry, even if that's absolutely realistic and you're trying to make a teeth grindingly real statement, that is not fun storytelling.
Oh, I didn't say it was.
And yes, I agree that that's what Disney did, but I'm trying to say that that is not what Disney should have done. And that is why I come up with the final conclusive opinion that this movie sucks and this is taking it in the wrong direction. That's all. That's what we're really talking about is how to explain our opinion about this piece of entertainment.
Yeah, but like I'm not going to tell you what you should think of the movie. It's completely valid for you to not like the movie on those grounds.
And I'm explaining why. I'm explaining why.
Yeah. But I also don't see it the same way. I enjoy this movie, and I do think of it as a warning. And it may not be able to affect the real world just the same way that Star Trek's derision of the Vietnam War had nothing to do with the end of the Vietnam War. It still continued until it ended. It has nothing to do with whether it has an effect. It's a warning from the filmmakers that either this is where we're heading or this is where we are. I'm not going to lambast them for that because it's something that they've been doing since science fiction was first created. So that's my own opinion.
So you're okay with Star Wars not having a character that represents hope? You're okay with Star Wars not actually demonstrating why we have this whole conflict in the first place. No, you're okay having a gray zone wherein we really don't know who the good guy or the bad guy is. So there's a whole bunch of people out there that actually sympathize with the Empire right now. And what you're saying is they're kind of right. Like we really don't know who to root for because there really is no reason to resurrect the Republic.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get clear as to exactly why you're thinking the way you're thinking.
I'm saying that from the time of the beginning of the movie, of this particular movie, not the whole trilogy, but from the beginning of The Last Jedi to the end of The Last Jedi, we see a character who has always embodied hope at his lowest point where he has lost his hope. But during the course of the movie, he finds it again. And by the end of the movie, he is a nigh indestructible force. I mean, not that he's actually indestructible, but his Force Ghost is, and he manages to defeat Kylo Ren with his Force Ghost and nothing but a Force projection. Because he does that after he has regained his hope. This is a character arc for Luke, a single movie character arc.
Okay, fair enough.
So, to answer when you said, like, do I want to see a Star Wars with a character that doesn't have hope? No. But I see a character who embodied hope, who is at his lowest point. And over the course of the movie, he gets his hope again. He finds a new hope in Rey. I made that up on the spot, but I thought it was poetic.
It counts. It qualifies.
Yeah. I know
I've heard those words somewhere before. By the way, the planet he's hiding out on is actually pronounced Ahch-To. So you got it right.
So I got it right. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hey, and that's the show for today. That's the end of part 1. We will be back next week. In the meantime, I hope you've been enjoying it. And as always, make tomorrow better than yesterday.